all of my stepdad's relationship with me, we've never had any kind of closure like that. You know, all of the accusations and assumptions and all of the promises that I was never going to amount to anything and whatever else that my stepdad always said to me. What happened is as an adult, especially after having my children, when I reflect back on it, I still don't like him. I'm still not happy with him. I still have pain and hurt and anger for him. But I also acknowledge I wouldn't be who I am without him. So whether he thought he was doing the right thing by being a dick, or whether he was just being a dick because it came natural, or whether he just didn't know how to be a dad, which is a hard fucking job. Mm-hmm. Whatever the reason, there was this moment as a 43-year-old adult of 2 where I was like, damn, whatever it was is irrelevant, because where I am today is because of how he treated me then. CIA calls this childhood trauma, because CIA knows that childhood trauma, the right balance of childhood trauma, creates a high-performing adult. And there's this sweet spot where too little trauma makes you an underperforming adult. Too much trauma breaks you and makes you a burden, makes you a liability. But somewhere in between the two makes you this high performer. And it's different for all of us because there's personality at play, there's individual values, there's the secret sauce, the recipe of how you were raised, who you grew up with. So it's not even something that you can replicate, but it is something that, going back to the beginning of our conversation, it is something you can measure. It's something you can test. So the reason that CIA puts new applicants through a 9 to 18 month application process, multiple mental batteries, cognitive batteries, interviews, role plays, et cetera, on the path to CIA, is so that they can get all those data points they need to confirm that you are that right mix of traumatized, just traumatized enough that you need external validation, external direction, you need external belonging, but not so traumatized that you need drugs and alcohol to cope with the day, not so traumatized that you're going to, undermine the agency that you work for in order to spy against the United States because you're pursuing some sort of, super ego. Sometimes they make mistakes with that, but by and large, they have it nailed down.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, so the difficulty can come from internal sources, or the difficulty can come from external sources. Like you could be actually fighting with your family against hunger, or fighting with your family in a war situation where there's bombs going off and you're having to move shelters and you're having to care for your little sister, and it's nothing that your parents are doing. But it seems like there's that either one way or another, we have to face adversity, and that adversity forges us like a diamond. And so whether it's from our parents or whether it's from a macro condition, you see greatness in people who've had that adversity that's come through them. And I think for me, one of the reasons why I've stuck with the plant medicine path is because it's the most difficult thing I can do. It's always hard. Sometimes it's not, but it's scary. You're completely vulnerable. You have to let go of all control. You're no longer you're subjected to the will of the medicine and the cosmos. And it's so that, and sweat lodges, and then cold baths, and climbing that freezing mountain with Wim Hof, choosing those moments of adversity and difficulty are necessary. Otherwise I become a sloppy, lazy comfort slut, because I have nothing else to bind me. So I have to continue to put myself in these difficult positions. And I think that's something that we all need to realize. It's we have to face adversity in order to evolve.
And we have to accept that we all have a different tolerance for adversity.
Right.
Which is a humbling thought, right? When you think about the adversity that you have an appetite for, when you're afraid, you're able to tolerate that fear to push through. When you're uncomfortable, you're able to tolerate that discomfort to push through. And that is unique to you. There aren't many people who can do that. I have a very good friend of mine who's a Navy SEAL. And we were talking recently about his Navy SEAL training. And he had these moments in his Hell Week where he was like, I don't think I can do this. But he was surrounded on his left and his right by other brothers who had been going through the whole process with him. And they had their own inspiration for him, right? But at the end of the day, he finished, he made it, he had an incredible SEAL career. And now when you talk to him, he's able to reflect on his own background and be like, yeah, what motivates him is always pursuing the next seemingly impossible challenge. That's what motivates him. That's what drives him. So he seeks discomfort. He finds joy in the discomfort. That is not me. I do not find joy in the discomfort. I find joy after the accomplishment.
Sure.
So when I'm uncomfortable, I'm fucking uncomfortable. I'm miserable the whole time. And I'm telling myself, if I can just finish, if I can just complete this, I will be proud of myself. So my gratification is always delayed.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how some people are. There are some people whose satisfaction, whose joy comes from knowing that they successfully avoided the discomfort. Right? And that there's not a single thing wrong with any of these people. It's just a matter of, I think to your point, knowing what you are, knowing how you can find that joy, and then prosecuting what must happen in order to embrace that joy. If avoiding the conflict, if avoiding the discomfort brings you joy, then by all means go avoid it. And ignore all the voices that are telling you have to go to the gym, you have to be fit, you have to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Just ignore those voices because they're not talking to you. There's plenty of voices out there who are saying, meditate and journal and go in and find your joy. Yeah. And that doesn't make your joy less than somebody else's joy. But what ends up happening is we get sucked into this idea that there's always something wrong with us. That idea that we're sucked into is fundamentally human. CIA has built their entire human intelligence collection apparatus off of the very predictable idea that people think negatively about themselves, right? That is human consciousness, is the negative thoughts that we have about ourselves. But that doesn't mean that you have to give in to that. It doesn't mean that you have to accept the narrative as a label for who you are and what brings you joy.